Good day all, welcome back to Special Interests with Bob and Donna. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today. Robert is going to talk about his novels and his nonfiction. His novels have been touted as electrifying, spellbinding, original, well-written, edge-of-your-seat, page-turner thrillers, and trust me, they are. The topic of most of his novels is the serial killer, and people are fascinated with how these serial killers think. We go from Ted Bundy, a most notorious person, to a BTK killer, and on across the United States and the world. So I'm going to introduce him in a moment, but just so that you know, Bob is available for talks about the criminal justice system, serial killers, the writing process, getting published in fiction and nonfiction, where he also can give talks on fishing, all kinds of fishing, spin bait and fly fishing, as well as hunting with shotguns, slug guns, muzzle loaders, crossbows, compound bows, and even bow fishing, which is quite challenging. He's written books on all of these subjects, and he will work with small and large groups at your place or ours. We're located on Long Island, and for that he'll do for a minimal fee, and I'll leave the contact information below so that you can click on it. And I'd like to now introduce award-winning author and crime thriller novelist, outdoors writer, Robert Banfelder, and I'm going to leave it to him. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Donna. Thank you for that nice introduction.
You're welcome.
I thought you were going to go stage right. I was going to come down the staircase like Loretta Young.
Okay,
I'm dating myself, but...
You are dating yourself, but yeah, I don't remember Loretta Young.
Oh.
So I'm not going to date myself.
You're a
But I'm
young
going to
chick.
leave it to you because you have some interesting things to share with the audience.
Okay. All right. So, after that nice intro, we'll get right into this, and we'll talk about, we'll touch on my 9 novels. What we're going to focus in on primarily are the first 3. I wrote a trilogy, or eventually I wrote the trilogy. So my first novel came out on a cusp of 1990-91, and it is called No Stranger Than I. It was published by Hudson View Press in Manhattan, and spent many years writing this book. I had a different title for the book, which when I sent it around, people were saying, no, come up with a better title than what I wanted to present. But I was at the mercy of the powers that be, so it came out as No Stranger Than I, again published 1991, the cusp thereof. Notice the cover. This is really amateurish. The cover is really not that sharp. The font, the size of the print, was much smaller than I wanted. So eventually, as years went by, I republished the book. There were a couple reasons for that. I republished the book under the title that I originally wanted, named Dickie, Richard, and I. And this is a novel, a study, if you will, of madness in the making. This title, I think, really symbolizes what Richard Geist, my protagonist, or more accurately, my antagonist, is all about. I have the book divided into sections. called The Emerger, The Adult, and The Spirit. I don't think the camera's going to pick up, but anyways, you got the picture there. And although I write in a literary style, I don't want that to be a turnoff. If you get the symbolism and some of the tricks of the trade that I present, that's terrific. If you don't, it doesn't subtract from the story. Again, a story of madness in the making. And you'll see this young boy, and we start out at actually age 5 in the novel. Age 4 going into 5. And the title is to my liking, the cover's to my liking, the font is a bit bigger. You can see the difference between the two books. I like people to read, not struggle, especially when we get up there in age and with bifocals and all that. It's the same prose all the way through, except for the end of the book. What I did at that point was I simply added an epilogue, which paved the way for the sequel, which paved the way for the next sequel. In other words, a trilogy, 3 books. So, let me read to you just briefly about the book. This is what they say about the book. Dickie, Richard, and I is a psychological thriller detailing the metamorphosis of a young, abused, and battered child into that of a multiple murderer and personality. Multiple murderer, not there at that line of demarcation crossing into serial killer, but we're getting close. It is a depiction of a boy subjected to a curious mix of care and cruelty by his deranged mother. Magic, hypnosis, and ventriloquism are the cogent systems of a disease that leads this young man to discover his divided selves. The author gives us a compelling look at madness in the making. And then we have some well-known writers. I won't get commenting on the book, but I'll excerpt from one. A marvelous novel, beautifully rounded structurally, with unbroken suspense and its premise ever present of tragedy. The style and wit are thoroughly fascinating, endlessly pleasing, and even awesome in power. I really savored the pathos and humor. And that was written by Dr. D. Crozier, PhD, Hemingway scholar. Again, don't get turned off with the, oh, this is literature and this is a bit heady and it's really not for me. If you like Thomas Harris, Jeffrey Deaver, who else comes to mind, Donna? The most prolific in the world.
David Baldacci.
No. I can't, his name escapes.
James Patterson.
James Patterson, okay. The most prolific writer in this genre in the world. I give you, I'm going to sound a bit presumptuous here, I give you a bit more substance. I give you not formula writing, I give you unique writing, unique storyline, and just take that for what it's worth. Okay, so a little bit about the author, a little bit about the book. There are writing adages. When I started writing, I was really in high school when a teacher told me I showed some promise. I went into college, I studied creative writing, and you'll learn there a couple of adages. We'll touch on one now, and then later on we'll go into the other one. And that is, write what you know about, and or research It's like real estate with location, location, location. That's what real estate is all about. Writing is, especially if you don't know your subject, but you want to write about a certain topic, research, research, research. I was fortunate in that I knew quite a bit about the subject of a deranged mother, and I did tremendous homework, tremendous research in spite of that. My mother was a sweetheart when she didn't have a drink or two. And that could be a glass of wine, it could be a beer, and she was like a different person. Later on, I was transferred from a school in New Jersey to New York. I lived with my dad's relatives. I don't know, I was too young, I didn't know what was going on in terms of Mom. So I built credibility. I built, fancy word, multisyllabic word, I built verisimilitude, credibility, believability into my prose because I knew what I was talking about. So what I'm going to do is not bog you down with this. I'm just going to read part of a chapter which will give you a picture of Mom. And this is from a chapter called Analysis, and that would be chapter 15 on page 110. So we'll go right to that. And you'll get a time frame here. Near the end of the school year, the kindergarten teacher told Dickie that he was being promoted to the second grade the following term, that he would skip first grade because he had performed extremely well, and that everyone was very proud of him. Mummy was quite proud too. First, she called the school to confirm Dickie's story. Secondly, she notified all the relatives, informing them of the news. Then came Christmas Eve, the one holiday that Dickie remembered most of all. Brrr. Mummy turned cold as stone, arguing with Father over how to string the lights and where to hang the ornaments. Dickie shivered as he hung the silvery strands of ice. No, not like that, like this, she shouted. Learn to do it nice. Dickie tried, but Mummy looked dissatisfied. She left the room, returning a moment later with a kitchen cleaver in her hand. Let me teach you how to trim the tree, she screamed, hacking off its branches with a spirit all her own, running through the house and ripping holly off the walls, cursing Dickie insanely till his little ears began to burn. True, not made up. When my mom had that drink or two, and especially around the holidays, she'll have a third one. This is some of the experiences that I incurred. So, where do we go from here? So you've met Richard Geist, Dickie, go from, we'll call him, as the child, Dickie. We go into adolescence, he's Richard. And then I deal with the I protagonist, or as I mentioned earlier in this case, the antagonist. Dickie's metamorphosis, in other words, his transition from child to a multiple murder, is a terrifying account of this serial killer. It paves the way for my genre. This book paved the way for my genre. I said, people are fascinated. They were fascinated with the first book, encouraged me to write more on this topic. And I did, and I studied extensively the mind of the serial killer. 8 out of my 9 novels deal with serial killers. The eighth is a story inspired by the Robert Schulman serial killer trial, which I spent 15 months, every day for 15 months at the Riverhead court, and then wrote another novel which we'll talk about down the pike. We're going to get into these books eventually, but today we're just going to stay with the three. The name of that book was Trace Evidence. And my ninth book, my ninth and final novel, final at that point, Donna wants me retired, but I think there's a book or two, a novel or two in me. The last one was inspired by a true story, the Sylvia Flynn trial. Not a multiple murderer, not a serial killer, but she did unquestionably, unequivocally murdered her husband. And when you get through with this book, you'll see with just cause. I could get into this and tell you how bad the lawyer she had later on. Initially, she had a fantastic one, but it was a question of money, so on and so forth. It's a novel unto itself, really. Okay, so I don't typewrite. I kind of touched on this a moment ago. I write very carefully. The literary terms are not there. They don't bang you over the head. If you're into this symbolism, you'll pick up on it. If you don't, it doesn't destroy the shape of the book, where it's going. Another adage, I spoke about an adage a moment ago. Another adage is to paint with words. Don't tell me, show me. And there's where the magic comes in. Learning to paint with words. There are tricks of the trade to make your prose fly. I won't get into this now. That's another book. It's a nonfiction book on the writing process where you'll learn that, like a carpenter has his toolbox, I have my toolbox, so to speak. I could touch on metaphors and similes and analogies and alliteration and personification and assonance and consonants. This is the magic. If you want to write and write well, this is what you'll learn in one of my nonfiction guidebooks. Okay, so I think we pretty much covered that. I mentioned that I taught these courses in college. Very, very enjoyable. So we'll take, let's see what I can do here. We've got these two books out of the way. We're going to go to my second novel. Remember, Dickie Ritchie and I, No Stranger and I, same book, just republished. My second novel in the trilogy is called The Signing. And Donna, I'll hold it up if you can focus in on that. And Richard Geist has grown up. He is a full-fledged serial killer at this point. He heads a murderous cult, and their agenda is chaos and the eventual collapse of our government. Pretty bold statement, but again, I build verisimilitude, I build credibility into the novel. Jumping quickly, we're going into the third novel that completes the trilogy, and it's called The Triumvirate. Triumvirate meaning a body of three. And in this novel, we have three powerful men who virtually control governments around the globe. We will be dealing with drug cartels ruling across three continents, a mystery within a mystery concerning 50-year-old secrets, dealing with Adolf Hitler's progeny, in other words, his offspring, be dealing with the Manhattan Project, that is experimentation of plutonium-239 on humans, and the Nazi gold and its exploration since World War II. In that novel, the final novel that completes the trilogy, it involves a Long Island couple, and we touch on clairvoyancy, self-questioning clairvoyance by the protagonist and his foil character, I'll call her. And I think it's an interesting interwoven, tangled web, dealing with love, loyalty, treachery and treason, and ordinary folks standing tall in the shadows of the extraordinary, the extraordinary. Of course, I'm going to have triumph of good over evil in the face of all adversity, but again, not formula writing per se. Each of these novels are unique. And that'll give you a pretty good idea of my first canon here, my first body in terms of the trilogy. And I thank you. Donna, is there anything you want to add? Come over here and sit down.
As you can imagine, I've read these books over and over again, and Bob is kind enough to ask me for my advice, and either he goes along with it or he ixnays it.
Overruled.
Overruled.
No,
But,
Donna has very, very good
But
input
you
in
will
it.
find Dickie Ritchie and I, The Signing, and The Triumvirate absolutely fascinating. And I don't remember which novel it is, but which is the one? Does it have to do with that club in California? Is this the one?
No, that's down the pike.
That's down the pike.
That's
Wait
in
till
a
you.
4-book series. Here we're dealing with a
the-
trilogy. Well, later on we'll be dealing with what they call a trilogy, a body of 4 works.
Where you will meet a very, very interesting protagonist.
You will.
The
You
one
will.
I love.
You
The
will
one I
love him.
love.
You will
But
love
that's
him.
the.
So
come,
says
folks.
Donna, and so says Bob Banfelder.
We'll leave the links to these 3 books for you at down below, so you can go directly to Amazon to check them out. There is a synopsis there, and you can read the reviews from people that have read these books, and they're quite good. Please give us a thumbs up if you're liking this video, and please subscribe to our channel, which is Special Interest with Bob and Donna. We'll be doing various things.
You want to tell them before we leave here how long we've been doing shows per se?
Well, we've been doing shows for five years for a Cablevision show called Off the Cuff, and we had our own Cablevision TV show here on Long Island for about 7 years.
7 years, yeah.
So we're transferring that over to YouTube, and we hope it's successful, and we count on you to make it successful.
And as a last word, promise, final, if you want to get a head start on a writing process, again, presumptuous statement here, this is one of the better grammar guidebooks covering grammar on how to write, not just grammar.
It's called The Essential Guide to Writing and Getting Published.
With a bonus
with
feature?
a bonus feature, Making Decent Dollars Writing, plus little known reward reaping benefits.
You won't get rich, but you'll have a lot of fun and you'll make a bit of change.
Thank you very much for watching,
Thank you.
folks. You have a great day.